Hey everybody, welcome back to your free TV. It is Friday, November 21st, 2025. So glad to be back with you here on the channel. I'll jump in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. All right, so glad to be back with you here on a Friday, TGIF, but of course, it's Freaky Friday, right? As you saw the email with this TRUMPDAMI sort of switch that came down at the White House today, and I'll be jumping into that. It's not as dire as we might think. If you didn't see that, speech from the Oval today or the presser between them, I will link it below so you can watch it. But it was pretty freaky for everybody to watch. However, again, I think it's Freaky Friday chess with Trump, and I believe that some certain steps really need to happen here in order for Trump to succeed in his mission with New York. But there's also some squirrely things behind the scenes to do with building and real estate moguls and massive investment bankers, of course, as usual. So we're going to jump into it here. I always start by saying thank you so much to everybody who supports the channel. Thank you. So appreciative, especially monthly people who subscribe. It keeps the channel going, and that's how I do stuff. And I'm praying also that this, I was good for a couple days there, and then the pausing keeps happening now. And really, we kind of need some new equipment on this channel. So that would be my Christmas wish is some cash in to be able to buy new equipment. But I will plug with my amazing sponsor, c60evo.com. Real quick here first as we're beginning, because I did a great video yesterday. If you didn't see it, I'll link it below again. Great to do with migraines, to do with C60 Evo, people having incredible results against migraines, inflammaging, all of it. This is the incredible ESS60 molecule, c60evo.com/YAFTV. This is the serum, facial serum, which I love. This is the liquids, the 4-ounce bottle. They're doing a great holiday sales. These two together get huge discounts. They're doing 40% discounts on 6 bottles or more, and you need to go to my landing page in order to get those sales. And it's a great way to do holiday shopping, support the channel, and of course, I love the olive oil capsules. The most powerful of the C60 Evo is the olive oil. It has the most Evo in it, and it's super powerful, just again for focus, brain health, body health, anti-inflammation, anti-aging, all of it because of getting into your mitochondria, cleaning out the garbage, and giving your trillions of cells renewed health. Excuse me. So anyway, check it out, and you see the link there. The links are below, and go to the check out the great sales. And thanks so much to my sponsor for doing that this year for the holidays. I'm super psyched about it. Okay, jumping into the news. Here we go. Thanks for letting me plug. It's what keeps the channel going. So here we go. We've got news. Oh, all right. So today we had, of course, Mamdani come to the White House, and it was always, just like, whoa, that's quick. He's coming right away. And I believe this came because of a few phone calls and a strategy, which I'm sure Trump has in dealing with this, because the threat we have with Mamdani is, of course, the Sadiq Khan syndrome of New York City becoming London 2.0, massively Islamified, which it already has and was set up to be that way by the Biden, whatever we say Biden, but by the stolen election last time that brought in the tens of millions of illegals, so many of them huge amounts of Muslims, and huge amounts pushed into New York City to build out the infrastructure that was able to bring in the fake election that was Mamdani. And of course, the huge, massive amounts of illegals voting, the huge effort. He, of course, was led by Linda Sarsour, who is a major jihadist, close friends with Siraj Wahhaj of the Oklahoma City BOM-BING. All of these things, the original WTC Bombing, excuse me. And so this is let me just jump in here, because what we see is the Freaky Friday switch is Trump saying, oh, Mamdani, he has some great ideas, and, especially around housing, and especially around lowering rents and creating, affordable housing for the people of New York City. And, Trump is basically trying to appeal to this FDR style democracy, bent that they kind of put out there during their press conference in the Oval, but basically saying, we're going to help Mamdani with this housing crisis situation. And so it's important to remember at this moment, and I talked about it, I think, 2 videos ago, that billionaire Bill Ackman, Jewish billionaire, okay, he was the first one to call Mamdani after Mamdani won, amazingly. Total set up the entire run, the election, all of it set up to bring him in. And we had Bill Ackman, kind of just like Netanyahu was the first one to call Biden and say, hey, Biden, so glad you got in. Let me know, how I can help, what I can do. Well, Bill Ackman called Mamdani first thing and said, hey, congratulations. Let me know how I can help, right? And Bill Ackman, let's remember, the massive investment banker, totally connected with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, way back to the Big Short, okay? But also of the recent C. Kirk murder situation, of the situation in, hosting that big struggle session in the Hamptons on Long Island to try to get Kirk back in line with the Israel First narrative, all of it. Well, he called Mamdani, what can I do? And then what we get a week later out of Bill Ackman is that he comes up with this push towards the federal government to privatize, once again, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And this has to do with the federal housing situation. And he, this is in direct direct contradiction to what the current, you got Turner, who's in charge of HUD, great guy, amazing Christian, calling for daily prayer for Americans to try to save the country, and prayer is paramount. But we get Bill Pulte. William Pulte, is in charge of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He is the director, Federal Housing Finance Agency director, and he's been being called out, okay, recently about, and a lot of this is coming through Todd Blanche, the whole DOJ deep state situation going on, kind of attacking Pulte to do with the Adam Schiff and Letitia James mortgage. And now we got Swalwell in there. All of this with their mortgage fraud, which is cut and dry, basically. And should I just jump into that now? Yeah, I will. So what we get here is that, no, I'll get back to, so they're attacking Pulte, okay, over going after Adam Schiff, after Letitia James, for all the same things that they went after Trump for, and trying to, destroy those possible indictments against Adam Schiff, Swalwell, Letitia James, which have already happened with James. And so what we're looking at here is this situation where Pulte had come out and said last month that this push by Ackman to try to privatize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac again is premature, that it's not, it's not, there's no preparation for it, it's not okay to do. And basically that if it was privatized, we're looking at $400 billion worth of money here that's at stake, and that refers to the Big Short back in 2008, where it was the first, where they all made the money on the basically the upside down loans, the subprime mortgages. It became, neocolonialism, neo-feudalism in this country, where suddenly, they got the George W. Bush to Barack Obama, passing through this big bank bailout and all of this, and Ackman in it all, okay, way back when, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And what Pulte is saying is that trying to privatize this in an IPO right now would be very, very premature, and that there's no way that the federal government is prepared to do that. But Bill Ackman is saying, well, how about we shave off 100 billion of that 400 billion down to 300 billion, and we do a private sale, and that 100 billion is basically forgiving all of the senior debtors, the senior investors, the highest senior investors who basically committed the entire Big Short, okay, back in 2008. And so you're basically getting all these massively rich people off the hook. And this is, again, the people who bought up all the housing since then, BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, all the same people, State Street, forgiving them, and since then, they've bought up everything, okay? And then they'll get back in here with whatever this behind the scenes situation is to do with Mamdani and their discussions around New York City and getting this massive real estate deals going on, massive building of huge amounts of housing, right? And this tying into the Federal Housing Finance Agency, and of course the director, Bill Pulte, being attacked by Todd Blanche out of DOJ, him and Ed Martin in charge of weaponization of government task force, going after these people as he's been directed to do, but now hugely on the hot seat as we're having this deep state DOJ sort of running what looks to me, very much so, our DOJ according to dollars that can be made in other places, and are they leveraging things? And that's my fear and concern. That's the Freaky Friday, aspect of this, is are they leveraging, these situations of politicians being indicted for very real and serious crimes, and not even touching yet on the grand conspiracy. People like John Solomon keep saying, no, the grand conspiracy case that goes all the way back to 2015, all the way to the present day, is rolling out in Southern District of Florida. We're going to see it. We'll see it as soon as January. January is still far away. However, trying to basically allow for the lawfare against these indictments of people like Adam Schiff and Letitia James, Eric Swalwell, who's now announced today that he is running for governor of California. This all happening with the backdrop, of course, of this huge, massive military insurrection style things that we're having the ex-military that are serving in Congress and in the Senate coming out and issuing these insurrection orders that should land them in jail immediately. And Trump saying, well, it is insurrection-y. And, of course, Stephen Miller always coming out and saying clearly, no, this is cut and dry, very clear insurrection. And yet, we're going to get strongly worded letters when these people should be rolled up immediately. And it's what the American people want, because this fake stuff you see on the news of oh, it's all just business as usual, that represents about 15% of the population of the United States versus the rest of us who want justice to be done, want our country back, and want to stop the invasion, stop the total change of the population of the United States, the migration, repopulation, and of course the cultural appropriation of the United States to shift it into another globalist regime. And so this is this situation here, going after Bill Pulte, okay, who's trying to stop the immediate sort of forcing this Fannie Mae Freddie Mac IPO, which will then go to, and Bill Ackman, huge, with the Israeli, the huge amounts of Jewish billionaire money. I mean, that's just reality. And they very much all are in what they call together their 13 tribes. And so concerning, However, I think that Trump could really do an amazing thing here in helping to control this. And I think partially what he is doing is saying, well, if we control what happens here in the rebuilding of New York, in the building out of this needed, which is really needed, housing in New York, and actually really help the people that need it, we might, this could be a really great thing. And Trump did jokingly say, you know, it's always been one of my dreams to be mayor of New York City, which I thought was very interesting. I had said that last week. I was like, when he's 92, maybe he can be the mayor of New York City as a hobby. But basically, you know, while this backdrop of this ongoing rolling coup that is ramping up, okay, against the Trump government and our American Republic, we get this Mamdani appearance, and what I see as what's necessary is that Trump on the federal level needs to do what Governor Abbott just did in Texas and declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, both domestically and foreignly, that it is both international and domestic terrorist organization, along with CAIR, of course, and then we get things like, you know, the National Association of Islamic Realtors or something, you know, NAIR, and then there's the Legal Defense Network, which I'll be talking about here in a moment, and looking at what Abbott has done. He certainly gained a lot of points in my book for this, little too late, because he allowed it all to happen, and squirrely, kind of behind the scenes, seemed to have been involved in a lot of this build out of these Islamicist areas of Texas, as well as huge amounts of cartel bought land, not to mention the CCP, right? Can't forget them. And so all of this buying up of our land and the setting up of this legal infrastructure to make it possible, especially for the Islamists, really started with Barack Obama. I mean, it started before that, but when Obama got in, he brought in this envoy, whatever, this special counsel to the White House to work for him. This woman, I can't remember her name now. It's been maybe 2 years since I've talked about her, but she was brought in, and her objective, her job, was to find thousands of Muslim legal professionals that could be brought into the U.S. or were from the U.S., but so many thousands of them weren't. You know, get quickly naturalized, just like Mamdani, naturalized for 6 years, and of course you have the young Republicans of New York trying to come up with all ways to denaturalize him, which could absolutely happen, but it's not looking like that's going to be the thing, but it should be. And I might mention that more, or if not tonight, I will soon. But what we saw here in Texas is we get immediately, of course, the next day after A.G. Paxton and Governor Abbott declare CAIR and Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organizations, we get, of course, immediately CAIR doing a lawsuit against Abbott. And I'll just read off here some of the news directly. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is CAIR, filed a federal lawsuit today or yesterday against Abbott and Paxton after the proclamation that the group is a foreign terrorist organization. The proclamation, issued Tuesday, said members and affiliates of CAIR, the country's largest group, this is what this liberal paper says about it, focused on advocating for the civil rights of Muslims. Okay, quite the opposite is true. It's a full jihadist organization, and the you know, it's like Gaddafi said, you don't understand. We're holding the worst back. And it's like what Trump said, you don't understand, they're letting the worst of the worst in. That is the jihadist Muslim Brotherhood connected organizations, intent only on conquering and intent only of the Islamification of America. And so basically what Abbott's proclamation did is it would make it illegal for these entities to own property in Texas or people associated with them. Massive, awesome. Imagine that in New York City, if Trump made this a federal law and could get it through our inept, awful, disgusting Congress and Senate, that would be amazing to codify it, that you can't have people associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, like Mamdani, for instance, couldn't own property in the United States. Okay, that would be one way if you're going to build a giant housing using our federal dollars, or privatizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, making it into a giant private, huge money-making machine. But of course, it'll be a private-public partnership with lots of federal money, that it won't be able to go to these jihadist neighborhoods to create conclaves like they're doing in Texas. And so the CAIR suit in Texas contends that labeling it as a terrorist organization without due process is in violation of federal law, violation of the organization's First Amendment rights and constitutionally protected property rights. Isn't that amazing, right? And that's the whole thing, what I was saying about Obama bringing in these thousands of Muslims to be put specifically in the legal infrastructure across the country and in the federal government. It's why there's so many now when there was none before that, like zero, okay? And they changed the law, recently to allow Muslims to be in Congress, to be wherever they want. And now we get this where they were specifically put in district courts, all the Soros funding, in the DA's offices, all across the board, to allow for their part of the lawfare. And they're interconnected, of course, with what we're going to see as a network of, Israeli and Jewish, backed bankers, basically doing the massive lawfare, okay, out of New York City, connected with Mamdani. It's just, again, just how you saw the same thing with the Islamification of Europe, right? And the same money behind it, and this thing of Islam being the weapon of creating this World War III scenario, and this jihadism as, sort of the broom of the globalists to wipe out Christianity. Because who never gets mentioned and is never highlighted and is never focused on is our Christian America, which is the center of America, is the building blocks of America, is the Constitution of America, and is what people are supposed to adapt to and become accustomed to. American ways, laws, Constitution, and etc. All right, versus other things, because Mamdani is a lying liar and a purveyor of lies, and he can smile and be smart all he wants with his, hundreds of millions of dollars behind him, and all the people grooming him to say all the right things to Trump, because Trump listens to these huge money deals, and hopefully behind Trump is, one up ahead of this situation. But who's the fodder in this? Will it be Bill Pulte, who's worked so hard with Turner and others to, go after the people who are part of the grand conspiracy, and Ed Martin? And so going on from there back to Texas and Abbott and CAIR's litigation, their litigation director is Lena Masri. The suit was brought by the Muslim Legal Fund of America. That's what I was mentioning earlier. The Muslim Legal Fund of America and the CAIR Legal Defense Fund. And so when we go on from that, basically we see that what Abbott is saying, and this is what Trump should be doing nationally, is we will target threats of violence, intimidation, and harassment of our citizens. And you have, I can't remember the congressman out of Texas, he's been really central in trying to fight this Sharia in Texas, basically saying, don't be intimidated, citizens. If a Muslim tells you your dog is offending them as you walk down the street, don't cede an inch, and don't give in. That this kind of intimidation, these threats of Islamophobia, are bogus and ridiculous, and to not cede an inch of your territory, of your own rights to walk down your own street. And so this kind of thing, and halal everywhere, and all of this. demand that when you go to a restaurant that it not be halal, what you're about to eat. And so basically he says we're going after violence, intimidation, and harassment of our citizens. We're focusing on individuals or groups who unlawfully impose Sharia law, which violates the Texas Constitution and state statutes. He said CAIR is a front group for Hamas. He says we're identifying, initiating criminal investigations into any person or group seeking to enforce a law outside of or contrary to state or federal law, and utilize Texas's terrorist offender registration program. Abbott has declared CAIR to be a foreign terrorist organization, said its members and affiliates cannot own property in Texas, and directed officials, including the Attorney General, to investigate Sharia courts in Texas. And he's also included the Texas Department of Public Safety to be involved. And basically there are Sharia courts. There's 2 Sharia courts in Dallas, Texas, as far as I know. And they're operating to, of course, keep all the women in line in their communities, and et cetera. So basically, their CAIR is trying to fight back, and investigations are going into the Epic City and the other the Meadow and all these areas that they're trying to create, that they are saying these developers are discriminating against non-Muslims and taking advantage of investors, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Muslim Legal Fund of America should be looked into deeply. And that is run, the head of that is Charles Swift. And feel free to leave any comments if you know anything about the people who brought up in this video. And I'll be looking into it, of course, for sure. But he said there's Sharia tribunals masquerading as legal courts. This is A.G. Paxton. And that the Islamic Tribunal in Dallas is said back, it's just called the Islamic Tribunal, okay, in Dallas. It set up, that they set up a rival court system to illegally enforce Sharia. And what they said in their statement is that their judges only handle family law, because that's great, and family law and disputes. But the Texas courts, of course, have the final decision on any legal matters. So yeah, they're walking down the street, they're going into stores, harassing what people are buying, what's being sold at stores, the whole 9 yards, just like Michigan and Minnesota. So good job on Abbott, and now we need that from Trump, and especially in this Mamdani thing or any federal funds, that without declaring the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization and CAIR, we will have the expansion of the Democratic Socialists across the country, with all of this money that goes in through their huge, massive network of funding. And again, as I said, you get a lot of Jewish billionaires in there. Okay, Soros is one, but there's just many, many. And you see Ackman jumping on this opportunity to push for the privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So we're talking about huge amounts of money and huge parts of the infrastructure. So I just wanted to make sure that we got talking about that on Freaky Friday, with Trump being like, he's got such great ideas. Love this guy. Love this guy. He's fantastic. Oh, he called me a fascist. Hey, don't worry, Mamdani. You don't have to answer that question. It's okay. It's okay. I've been called much worse, says Trump today. When Mamdani really deserved the Zelensky treatment. You have no cards. But Trump knows that there's many cards being played here, and hopefully many chess pieces. And I'm sure we'll be finding out much more besides. So yeah, we had people like Jack Posobiec in the press pool there in the Oval saying, hey, you said you're going to basically overtax white people, white neighborhoods to support your housing initiative, basically just taxing what you consider to be the wealthy. And Mamdani said, oh, no, we're just, it's not about white people. We're just going to tax the rich, basically, which isn't true, is not true. This is a Sadiq Khan 2.0 plan, as we're seeing in, basically it's basically becoming a communist country in the UK, and the people are suffering so massively under it. basically fallen to it. And the crime, the it's the issue of jihad. It's lying to get what you want and to steal, and to play in to the globalist infrastructure, of course, of that we are going to give you to the digital ID, we're going to make you a global citizen, and it's going to happen, and we're going to make it happen. And of course, that backed with all of the AI centers and all of it. And so when we look at things like Mike Huckabee and what happened there, and the leaked visit of him, this is all adjacent, it's all the same. It all funnels into the same people with the same corruption and the same problem of having ethics and morals. And maybe the first virtue, of course, in Plato is courage, right? You can't have the other virtues without courage, and the lack of courage and the ability to be bought off, like Mike Huckabee. And, President Trump says, I stand with Mike Huckabee, even though he, took that meeting with Jonathan Pollard, who was released. Trump did not release him. This was pre-Trump. After serving 30 years for 100,000 documents of national intelligence that was sold to Israel, he tried to sell it to the Pakistanis. He's an equal opportunity grifter. But John Pollard, the Israeli spy, met with Mike Huckabee recently, okay, after committing these heinous crimes. He got 30 years in prison when he should have been executed, basically, for his crimes under the Constitution. And he gets the sentence commuted. And, people often don't understand that there is something designated by the FBI called Israeli-based organized crime syndicates, okay? That are super about all of these massive oligarchs, so many out of Ukraine, and what George Webb calls the Ziklags, right? These mercenary groups that are connected to these oligarchs that often have dual citizenship with Ukraine or Russia and Israel, and are operating, of course, against Russia and against the United States and against everything. And we have the peace plan being orchestrated in Turkey with a 28-point plan. Trump has put a 1 week, he basically said on Thanksgiving is the deadline for Zelensky to agree to this agreement without any wiggle room, and hardballing that. And there probably will be some wiggle room, but it's interesting, and I'll get more into that in a moment. But, with Mike Huckabee, I can never think of him without thinking of those awful, you watch Real America's Voice or Fox, I have to aggregate so much news. So I just, I need to see what people are talking about. But you always get those awful commercials, right? I've said it before many times on this channel, but it's that international coalition of Christians and Jews, the grift. We just need $30 to give food to this one left remaining Ukrainian Jewish woman. She's 95. She survived the Holocaust. She didn't really, but she's not even really religious, but she's praying now because she's starving. And so you must give her $30 so we can give her this box of food. Eggs are her favorite, right? This kind of crazy crap, right? And it's never like, it's the coalition of Christians and Jews, but the food boxes are never going to the starving Christians. They're not like, hey, Nigeria, they just got hit hard by Boko Haram, 52 girls stolen, pay $50 so we can, get some, whatever, weapons to go and get these girls back who were stolen and be sold in sex slavery in the northern part of Nigeria, which is now, at least more than a third Islamified. Okay, a Christian country of Nigeria is now, looks like nearly half out of northern Nigeria is totally run by globalists funding jihadist groups, and Boko Haram's only one of about 30. And that just did happen. 52 girls stolen from a Catholic school. It harkens back to, remember when there was like that huge raid in Nigeria where like 500 girls were supposedly stolen and then recovered, a bunch of them. And then they were in some special school, and Michelle Obama was there. She was big in it. I think even Kamala Harris made some appearances over there. and they were trying to get them on fast track to citizenship to the US, I'm sure, to groom them into some weird positions over here. It's all super sketchy what goes down. But yeah, Mike Huckabee as ambassador should be revoked just for his ridiculous grifting of the International Coalition of Christians and Jews commercials that torture us every day. Those of us who watch the news. And however, but this John Pollard meetup in support is horrific. It's horrifying. And of course, Huckabee never should have got this job. But we know that there's a huge shakeup and change going on with the whole Israel situation and the kind of color revolution that was happening there that had everything to do with October 7th and actually the push to get out Netanyahu because he wasn't left enough, he wasn't globalist enough, and to use all of the crimes he had committed against him is what's been happening with deep state globalists, so many connected to the Biden regime, Anthony Blinken, and we get, of course, Ehud Barak of Epstein fame. All of this crowd was actually going against Netanyahu to get him out, very much like the Democrat Socialist America presenting their huge front on the old guard of Democratic Party, because they already got rich, those old Dems. They can go home, start their happy hour earlier, and just get out already because we're ready to come in with a hardcore revolution against the country. And they're doing it in Israel too. So it's all major coups all around. All right. And I'm not trying to be, whatever. It's Freaky Friday, but this is just the reality of the world. And if there's one thing that Americans need to do besides waking up to the imminent threats that we're under, is to realize that this kind of hardbore revolutionary stuff's coming faster and harder at us, and that we don't do enough. Okay, truly, we don't go out and protest. We don't go out and demand things. We don't organize in the ways that need to happen against such a massive assault. And on, the president's end, coming out with a huge speech to the American people, using his executive powers to take over the airways, to do a 2-hour breakdown of what's going on with the attempts against the country would be the thing to do, but it's not happening. And we need more people to be out in the streets around all of this. So basically, going on from there, I'll be bringing up more about what's going on with the fight to demonize Bill Pulte and Ed Martin, as they're doing great work. Of course, Ed Martin working closely with Harmeet Dillon over at the, she's working with the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. You don't hear much from her a lot. And of course, Tulsi Gabbard with all of this information behind the scenes, because it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. And so I wanted to mention the latest on Tina Peters. She, of course, is the Gold Star mom who's been in prison now for several years by the state of Colorado and the evil rot that has taken over the state of Colorado for her trying to preserve the original records of the 2020 election that they came in with the DOM-INOION machines and said, oh, we're wiping the whole machines because we're going to get ready for this next election. And she said, well, no, we have to preserve these records. That's legal. You have to preserve the election records that happened. You can't just wipe them with some software update. So she made a copy of the hard drives and saved it. And then they arrested her, threw her in jail. Well, now, and Todd Blanche is fighting all the lawyers, all the America First people trying to get her out. She should be in a witness protection program on the federal level. And Trump should be sending in federal marshals to go and take her out of that Colorado jail. But instead, she gets placed in solitary confinement yesterday. And, there should be huge protests outside the prison. I mean, all of this should be happening, but they're obviously trying to harm her, trying to disable her. Now she's in solitary confinement after a complaint of harassment from a particular woman who seemed to be organizing people against her within the prison. And she's in danger. And all she did was save the evidence that we are all so thankful for. And we pray that for her safety, and that President Trump does the right thing and gets Tina Peters out of the hellhole in Colorado. Okay. And so I want to go from there to just a couple more things. I'm going to wrap it up tonight on Freaky Friday. Is I wanted to mention a couple things. An interesting thing here is we did get Pras Michel. Pras Michel was sentenced to 14 years in prison for the Obama campaign money laundering and the bundling thing that he did. This was like millions of dollars, as far as I remember. I think he was from Indonesia. I think he's from Indonesia, but there was all this money from votes that was going through him from the campaign back to the campaign. Money basically that he's just gathering friends and people to basically do these fake votes for Obama. And we also have that woman representative, I believe, from Florida. Let me remember her, who just got indicted for the same thing. Let me find her. Oh, what is her name? Sheila McCormick. Yeah, Democrat out of Florida. Sheila McCormick, representative. She's indicted for embezzling federal emergency funds. Federal emergency funds from the state of Florida, using them for campaign funds. And she had owned a health company before this that was related to FEMA relief programs and then as she started to run for Congress, and she had received $5 million that was connected to the COVID shots and connected to the health company and all of this kind of stuff in federal emergency funds. And money was funneled to straw donors, okay, who then returned it to her campaign. Same thing as what Michelle was convicted for. So he got 14 years. Hopefully she'll get the same. Sheila McCormick, representative, Democrat out of Florida. And this is what they got. This is what they do. It's just a giant, if we don't get rid of the machines, we don't have same day hand counted ballots. It used to be bad back in the day, Chicago, Mayor Daley and all these people, it was just like, use all the unions. We're just going to harvest as many ballots as we can. We pay money, and that was hard enough to fight back then. But now if we don't get election reform and what's her name? Heather Honey. Is it Heather Honey? That's now in the White House in charge of election integrity czar or whatever, needs to get a little more busy because we're not hearing enough of what's going on there. So we're fighting an uphill battle here for 2026. And I'm sorry I'm not more upbeat today, but this is the reality, and I feel the intensity of it. That the threat of insurrection that came straight out of the mouths of former intelligence agents, who now we have Spanberger, John Brennan's acolyte, running Virginia and going up hard against the Comey indictments, and everything that's going on. We're fighting a huge battle, and we have to get serious and understand that it is very, very serious. And this is all happening as we're getting these fights with the NDAA to stop the AI amnesty moratorium. Basically the 10-year moratorium to try to stop states from having a say over AI. That has to, that's coming up rapidly, taking action on that. Go to a3p.org, a3p.org, that's article3project.org, but I believe you just go straight to a3p.org. You go and they already have your form letter there. It's for emailing to your senators, but billblasterapp.org is great because you get your phone numbers to everybody that you need to call to do with protesting this this AI amnesty they're trying to sneak again after 8 months later. Ted Cruz again is doing it, and we need to stop it. So that's the action point for today. So important. What we want is protection for, of course, children from AI, but we want copyright protection for everybody's creations, everyone's copyright, everything online. okay, books, everything. And then the community's costs of energy, resources, all of it, protection. And, like Steve Bannon says, and Americans this should be a sovereign wealth fund, this AI moonshot thing that Trump's doing with all these zillionaires from Saudi Arabia and everywhere else. This moonshot of AI, this transformation is great. It's going to be American values AI, right? That it should be a sovereign wealth fund, and that the people should own at least 50% of what's created with this. If you're going to steal our resources, take up our land, and totally change our communities and our way of life and steal all our jobs, then we should at least own it. Yeah, there's that. But basically, and of course, the protection from censorship is, of course, vital in that as well. And so, speaking of censorship, at the COP30 yesterday, I believe, there was huge fires that broke out at COP30 down in Brazil, and huge amounts of protesters that came, attacking the whole conference. It was a huge SHIT show in Brazil, in Belém, right? The Protect the Rainforest COP30, that's really just about creating a huge globalist censorship and surveillance system and stealing the resources for the natural asset corporations. This broke out yesterday, and this, I think that the fires that started near this creepy demon statue that the CCP had gifted, of course, to the Brazil congregation. It's like a dragon jaguar, trying to be their jaguar god or whatever, but it looks basically like a dragon, and then has massive demon Satan horns on the top. And I think that's where the breakout of the fire is happening. And we are getting this situation of someone from the UN named Charlotte Scaven trying to push this huge international censorship agreement, that misinformation is the biggest cause to making the earth weep. And, the earth is very sad because we all speak our minds so much about the reality of what's really going on with energy and nature and the earth and our right to it. And so that's their huge push at COP30, is this global infrastructure of surveillance and policing, especially of communication. But this massive interruption with protesters and fires is quite interesting. I'll link it below, but libertysentinel.org. Alex Newman is down there. He usually always goes to these things, and he's doing a great job reporting on it. But of course, it's the same old thing, phase out the fossil fuels, and most importantly, okay, is accelerate the Western wealth transfer. That all the money that we still have, I don't have much. I don't think most of you do. But those rich Westerners, meaning basically destroy Western civilization, okay? And it's very interesting as a juxtaposition, because Palantir, that's super involved in what I was talking about yesterday with the drone dome, right? That seemed to roll out right in the area of where Seekirk was murdered within those few days. Huge Operation Valhalla strike Candace Owens was reporting on today, which I'll get to here at the roundout at the end of this video. But very interesting with Palantir, they came out today and were saying, hey, we've got this Palantir fellowship, what's it called, a sort of a teaching fellowship with Palantir, where they're going straight to high school kids and recruiting them to skip college, work for Palantir, and that the first part of their training, interestingly, is that they have to be taught on the values of Western civilization, American civics, and what is Western civilization, American civics, and America's history, and the protection and preservation of it as part of their training for developing the AI that is to be used in Palantir for this AI surveillance police infrastructure. Okay, so they supposedly are teaching AI how to save and protect America. Yeah, we're gonna have to dig deep into that one. So I will look further into that, but it is squirrely at best, and surprising to hear, as we have, of course, Linda McMahon coming out yesterday, the director of Department of Education, saying we are in our final stages of getting rid of the Department of Education, and saying great things about it. That the Department of Education, we saw during the shutdown, during the shutdown of the 30 whatever, however many days, 40 something days, it meant nothing to us. We were like 70% furloughed out of the Department of Education, and nothing changed a blip, because we're not needed and there's nothing we do except we're just an interface between federal money going to states. And she said, so we're distributing the funding to the states. Our whole intention here is to basically revamp education in the United States, with a hard reset in education, to get the micromanaging out of DC, and to basically, hopefully, take a lot of power away from the Democrat run national teachers unions. Okay, because we get Randy Weingarten out there always like funneling hundreds of millions of dollars back into Democrat campaigns that come through the unions, and trying to stop it and get the DEI out of the schools. What McMahon said is that, federally, the schools, the states and schools won't receive the federal money if they continue with the DEI stuff. And they hope to codify the closure of the Department of Education during her term there, so that it can't be just resurrected when the Democrats, if pray they don't, get back into the White House. She said the final mission of the department is to empower the states to have a renaissance in American education, prioritizing students over bureaucracy and giving them, all the tools to do so. And made it important to point out that special needs programs, kids, all of those programs will be ongoing and uninterrupted. And that she has moved basically the infrastructure of the payment of those grants to the Department of Labor, that has a huge grant fulfillment system, much better and perfectly organized, that they don't have at the Department of Education, and that the Perkins Act grants will continue uninterrupted, and all of that, which is very important. Okay, and so I think I'm going to be leaving it there. I want to mention a couple things on my way out. And there was something else I was going to get back to. Oh yeah, Ukraine, that's kind of a big one. Kind of a big one. But Dick Cheney's funeral, right? A couple interesting things there, as George W. Bush was slathering on about what a brilliant, great, underspoken, trustworthy, friendly guy Dick Cheney was. Who wasn't there? The Clintons weren't there. Okay, and we know they didn't show up for their depositions on Epstein. Comer says we're going to give him the Bannon treatment, stick him in prison for contempt of Congress. And they weren't there at the old Dick Cheney funeral. They didn't want to come to the National Cathedral. They didn't want to show up anywhere near DC. So very interesting there to see that roll out. And talking about, of course, the Ukraine war and what's going on there, we get Zelensky leaking out the information of the 28-point plan, but this hugely looks like, and I started talking about it earlier, but like I do, skipped on, that it's looking like huge ceding of territory to Russia. It includes that Russia agrees to 100 billion of the seized assets to be used to rebuild everything they just destroyed in the energy infrastructure, which was planned. And then we get the Azov Corps, right? The Azov Corps. It's no longer the Azov Battalion, but it's the Corps. It's gained a lot of power and clout there in Ukraine, and running Zelensky, on a choke collar. But basically, denazification is central, and also that the military of Ukraine must be greatly reduced, that they have to get rid of all long-range weapons, all long-range missiles, that that NATO has to agree to stop its expansion, which I love, fantastic. And also that Russia must be allowed to re-enter into the G8, okay, into the global community without prejudice. And of course, Europe's freaking out about this, but this is all happening right at the same time as the secondary sanctions to do with liquid oil and Rosneft are kicking off. And so they don't want to lose that Russian energy, and they have nothing to fight against it with anymore. So let's hope that the pressure gets this thing done and we can move on. We can move on. Trump and team and allies have the power now, as I was describing in my last video, to be able to make this happen where they didn't 6 months ago. And so I think we're going to see great results on this soon. And of course, Keith Kellogg has announced, and he's the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. He's been rejected, of course, by the Trump administration for his deep state, globalist intentions. And so he's resigning or whatever. They're getting rid of him, and he will be gone in January. So he's retired general, and he's now retired in general. Okay, so there's a lot more I could say. Whenever I look down, there's always more to report. So I'm not going to look down anymore at 56 minutes. I'm just going to say it is time to pray, America, because everything's ramping up, and there's so much good. But we also see that as the good breaks out, it's like the Hydra, but it's worse than that. It's like the Minions, or just the zombies. Like they just keep coming. Like the infrastructure is so vast and huge that has been created by the deep state globalists, and with their infinite amount of money, that the attacks just keep coming and keep coming. And they're getting pretty bold with trying to pop off something kinetic, it looks like. And so Trump's trying to hold it all together, but our prayers are paramount. They're so paramount. What we do in our spiritual life and in our lives in general are good that we do, right? I can't remember who said it, but we're all guilty of the good we do not do, right? Omitted goodness, right? Those kind of, it's like omitted lies. Do the good in your daily life. Go the extra mile, get involved, take the action, local action. Because this is where, things like, CAIR and whatever was able to take over Dallas, right? And the politicians and the local governments and the city councils. Those positions are so vital. So I pray that you'll choose a position, you'll choose your fight, and, and your goodness every little time it comes up. And just take a breath. If you don't think you have the energy or whatever, but let's all try a little harder, get a little more involved. And yeah, that's our mission. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have some peace time, some nature time, definitely some family time, some laughter time. It's so important. Taking the pauses, right? You have to have the pauses so that you can have the energy to do the good. And so it's so important. And so I just want you to, take all advantage of good family, faith, fellowship, and, put on your God's armor and get busy. You are free. I'll see you after the weekend. And let's pray that Freaky Friday goes into Sane Saturday. Sane Saturday, right? Okay. You are free. Again, check out the sponsor. Check out the links below, c60evo.com. Huge sales for the holidays. Great products, great presents for your your family and your friends. Woo! Been talking too long. And if you found something that was, useful or just added value, and you want to support the channel, it's so appreciated. There's ways to do so below, and you are free. And I'll see you next time.